It's the kind of saga that turns calm transfer windows into psychological battlegrounds. A silent war fought not with bullets or boots, but with whispers in boardrooms, subtle moves behind closed doors, and the kind of chess-like maneuvering that defines modern football politics. Because right now, Bryan Mbeumo, the electric Brentford winger who has quietly risen from the shadows of the Premier League into one of the most tactically intelligent, versatile, and deceptively dangerous attacking threats in England, stands at the epicenter of a brewing storm, a tug-of-war that has Manchester United and Tottenham locked in a high-stakes staring contest. Both clubs desperate to secure not just a signing, but a statement, a symbol of ambition at a time when every move matters. And Fabrizio Romano, whose word in the transfer market might as well be gospel, has dropped the kind of insider bombshell that jolts both fan bases into overdrive. Mbeumo is giving priority to Manchester United, even as his longtime manager, the meticulous and highly respected Thomas Frank, closes in on the Spurs job, a shift in the Premier League's coaching landscape that threatens to tilt the board in favor of North London at the 11th hour. And this is where things begin to unravel into something far deeper than a simple transfer. Because if you look close enough, beyond the headlines and carefully crafted press briefings, you'll start to see a pattern, a layered power play unfolding in slow motion, one that has the potential to either reinforce Manchester United's new identity under Ruben Amorim or shatter the momentum they've been trying to build in this post-Ten Hag world. And it all hinges on a player whose decision could reshape the Premier League's top six pecking order. Because when Mbeumo made his initial intentions clear, leaning toward Old Trafford, swatting aside interest from Newcastle, brushing off Arsenal's subtle flirtations, and even pausing on Tottenham's appeal despite their Champions League credentials, it was viewed as a major coup for United, a sign that the club still had pull, that history and prestige could outweigh short-term setbacks like a season outside Europe's elite competition. And let's be honest, that kind of loyalty, uncommon in today's cold, number-driven football economy, resonated deeply at Carrington, where senior figures were reportedly ecstatic about Mbeumo's willingness to join a project rather than just a trophy train. Because this is a player who's not just about speed and technique, but about football IQ, discipline, and hunger. And when United came in with that second bid, 50 million plus 10 million in add-ons, it was more than just a financial offer. It was a declaration of intent, a signal that they were willing to meet Brentford nearly pound for pound in what they'd just spent on Matthias Cunha from Wolves. And make no mistake, Cunha's $62.5 million price tag wasn't just a standalone figure. It was a measuring stick, a new standard for Premier League attackers not named Salah or Holland. And Brentford, sharp negotiators as ever, weren't going to budge easily from a valuation that hovered around $65 to $70 million. But even as talks progressed and United edged ever closer to Brentford's sweet spot, something unexpected happened in North London. Something that injected chaos into what had seemed like a linear path to Old Trafford. Because with Ange Postecoglou out and Spurs moving with the kind of ruthless clarity we rarely associate with their board, Thomas Frank suddenly emerged as the surprise frontrunner for the Tottenham job, a manager with deep roots at Brentford, a man who had not only coached but cultivated Mbeumo into the player he is today. And as whispers of Frank's verbal agreement with Spurs began to swirl, so too did the fear at United. What if Frank becomes the deal breaker, the X factor who turns Mbeumo's head at the last second, reigniting a bond of trust and familiarity that no project, even one as massive as Manchester United, could replicate overnight? Because let's not forget, footballers are humans before their assets, and comfort, belief, and trust often outweigh trophies and paychecks in their final decision-making process. So while United were readying a wage offer in the $150,000 to $200,000 a week range, a figure that dwarfs Spurs' initial $130,000 offer, it wasn't just about the numbers anymore, it was about emotional leverage. And suddenly, the psychological edge began to shift, slowly, imperceptibly, but undeniably, because the Daily Mirror dropped a report that felt like a gut punch to United fans. Frank had not only agreed to join Spurs, but had requested specifically that the club pursue Mbeumo as his first major signing, a request that sent shivers through United's recruitment hierarchy, who had believed, perhaps prematurely, that the deal was nearing the finish line. And while Fabrizio Romano later calmed the storm by stating that Mbeumo was still prioritizing, the door had been cracked open, and now every hour that passes without confirmation only deepens the suspense. Because behind the scenes, Tottenham are not sitting still. They've already initiated talks, they're already shaping a proposal, and while it may not yet match United's financial muscle, they have something just as dangerous. The promise of Champions League nights, the magnetism of elite European football, and a manager who already knows how to get the best out of Mbeumo. And that's why this isn't just a transfer. It's a psychological thriller, a study in power dynamics, in player loyalty, in managerial influence. And if you want to understand just how delicately balanced this situation is, you need to know that according to Rudy Galletti, Spurs have officially held exploratory talks while United continue to negotiate with Brentford to raise their final bid ever so slightly, closer to the $65 million mark with bonuses included. But what's even more fascinating is what former United and Tottenham scout Mick Brown said, a man still deeply connected at both clubs who insists United are advancing and expects the deal to be completed soon. A term so dangerously vague, it only amplifies the tension, because in transfer language, soon can mean tomorrow or never. And when Brown adds that Mbeumo has made it clear he wants to join United, you have to ask, is that still true now that Thomas Frank is heading to Tottenham? Or is the emotional tug of his former boss beginning to weigh heavier than United anticipated? And if you think that's paranoid, just consider the timing. Frank's Spurs agreement breaks just as the final financial tweaks to Mbeumo's deal are being negotiated, which is no coincidence, no accident, but rather a classic move in the transfer playbook. Destabilize your rival's bid by altering the emotional landscape around the player, and with Frank in the Spurs dugout, the balance may yet tilt again, though Ruben Amorim, the man now tasked with shaping United's future, remains convinced Mbeumo fits his tactical blueprint perfectly. A player capable of rotating across the front three, stretching lines, beating defenders 1v1, and contributing creatively and defensively. And this isn't a hunch. It's a belief backed by data, by Amorim's own analysis sessions, where he's reportedly studied Mbeumo's pressing patterns, movement off the ball, and even his passing angles in congested areas, which shows you just how serious United are about this move. And yet, in football, intent doesn't always translate to success, especially when external factors, emotions, relationships, legacy, begin to creep into a player's mind. And that's why this race isn't over, not by a long shot, because Tottenham are still lurking, still plotting, and if they can close the Frank deal and formalize a financial offer that gets even close to United's, the pendulum could swing wildly at the last second. And so, here we are, trapped in the final act of what feels like a slow-burning epic, with Mbeumo himself holding the power. The final decision resting not on agents or chairmen, but on the player's own convictions. And for all the reports, all the leaks, all the expertly worded newsletter updates, the truth is this: no one truly knows which way this will go, not yet. Not until the moment Mbeumo signs on that dotted line. Not until we see the photo of him holding the shirt, be it red or white. And until that moment arrives, the suspense will only grow, the tension only tighten, because this is more than just a transfer. It's a referendum on ambition, loyalty, influence, and timing. And in the brutal, beautiful world of Premier League football, that might be the most powerful combination of all.